All right, thank you. Again, my name's Charlie Stewart. Yeah, I was asked to kind of do a return over feed. We've had a few Holsteins, a dozen Holsteins for the last year and a half. So I guess it was kind of interesting for myself just to sit down and punch a bunch of numbers and see where everything lands. Yeah, just an outline for today. I'll give a brief history of our farm, kind of our path with Jerseys, why we tried a few Holsteins, and go through how we feed, what we're feeding, how that breaks out on a per breed basis, what that means financially for us, and where we're going to go in the future with that info. So I farm with my wife Kim, and we have four small kids, all boys. Oldest one is 7 in May, and the youngest one is 3 in June. So keeps us kind of busy. My wife's actually a nurse, works at the Peterborough Hospital. Yeah, we started about November 1st, 2013. Acquired our herd and quota, started at 45 kilos, farm up at Mildmay. Later moved, shortly after that, actually moved down to the Cobourg area where my wife is from. Bought an empty freestall barn, 100 stall barn, and yeah, you can kind of see in that middle picture, center drive-through. It's a 4-row barn. The dimensions of the barn kind of fit Jerseys better than Holsteins. Yeah, we have bunk silos. You didn't really see in that last picture, but in behind the, I guess, looks like to the left in the picture, have bunks, open front shed. So with the bunks, it's kind of nice, and with small kids and not a lot of time, we pretty much rely 100% on custom work. So all those shiny pieces of equipment in the pictures there, none of them are actually ours, but we get to ride in them and don't have to fix them. So we kind of like that that system, and we feel like it enables us to make as good a feed quality as we possibly can. So Jerseys, I guess our path with Jerseys, yeah, I guess we started from scratch. My wife was not from a farm. I did grow up on a dairy farm. That quota was sold long before I ever started. But yeah, I kind of grew up in the Paris area, lots of Jersey herds in that Brant County pocket, and kind of had this idea that, you know, I was gonna, well, I always wanted to milk cows, and kind of always wanted this like herd of nice cows. And at that time, looking back, it was like dollars per hectoliter. The higher the dollars per hectoliter, the more bragging rights you almost had to your friends. And yeah, looking back, like the dollars per hectoliter and kind of following the LPI would probably be our two biggest financial mistakes. Yeah, you soon find out that it's dollars per kilo of quota, not dollars per hectoliter. And for us anyways, LPI incorporates components with the production calculation, and that's not where we want to head. So we kind of got on this, yeah, need more milk kick, and I guess 2017, 2018, there was actually just kind of on a whim watching World Dairy Expo has these virtual farm tours, and we just watched, yeah, the one once, Lion Jerseys in Iowa, 300 cow herd. They were at that time looking to exit. None of their kids were taking it on. And just kind of watching the videos, it looked like cows that could really work. So just basically called them up, bought 10 cows and 10 bred heifers. And yeah, over the next year or so, we kind of really noticed a difference in production levels. And not so much on how much a cow, where they peak at, but I would say the second half, the lactation, cow's pregnant, and they still work hard right to the end of the lactation. And then our kick with the Holsteins was right before DFO was changing the pay structure, the SNF pay structure. Yeah, I'll show you the numbers, but we kind of do the math, and at that time, looking back when we started, you know, our SNF was probably as low as 1.65, through the winter, and as high as maybe 1.8. And you did the math on the old quota calculator, and you kind of soon realized that we were leaving a lot of money on the table, and actually at least 30 grand a year. So at that time we bought a group of Holsteins from Summit Home, Holsteins down by Ancaster, kind of well-known production herd, just to bump up our SNF. And again, I guess I do a lot of things without planning, but looking back and not knowing exactly how DFO was changing that kind of the pay structure for SNF, I was kind of in my head thinking that just need to bump up to 2.0, but anyways, we'll go over those numbers later. So our current TMR right now, basically feed a Jersey TMR, and then the Holsteins are eating as much as they eat of that. So high corn silage diet, I guess I didn't say earlier, we have about 160 workable acres. We're at just over 100 kilos of quota. So we feel like a high corn silage diet kind of just fits our program. So the diet's there, a little bit of straw, a bunch of corn silage, 25 kilos as fed, 8.5 kilos of haylage, 4 kilos high moisture corn, which would be about 27, I think the last year was 27% moisture. We get wet brewers grains out of Toronto. That comes every 2 weeks. And soy meal and mineral, so a pretty simple ration, I think. And I used the numbers, for our DHI numbers and our basically the numbers that our nutritionist pulls up on the computer to say how much based on our production DHI numbers, how much kilos of dry matter does a Jersey need to eat to fill what we're filling. So a Jersey is eating 20.3 kilos of dry matter, and the Holsteins, based on their production over the last year, are eating 27.1. So a fair bit more dry matter. And I also try to do current prices on feedstuffs, and not using what it cost us to grow an acre of corn, but trying to use actual book values to give a true number. So it's kind of surprising actually, and our soy meal is still booked at just over 500, and that's now well over 700. So that number will change a bit, but yeah, so Jersey is taking about just over $6 a day to feed, and Holsteins are taking about $8 a day. So our cow performance over the past year, I guess conveniently, Lactanet just sent out our herd management score, and in those cow management records, they break the herd apart based on breed. So I've used those numbers mostly just to have an accurate comparison of the two. Our Jerseys versus Holsteins, and the numbers might be skewed a bit, like Holsteins when we did get them. Lowest they milked 3x, so they would have, and we bought them fresh, so they would have probably peaked a little higher than they would have on the 2x, so which you can see in their BCAs. Holsteins are about 300 BCA, and Jerseys are about 280. Jerseys 83, a little over 8,300 kilos. Holsteins well over 12,000 kilos. Fat and protein, as you can see, the Jerseys 5.1 and 3.8 protein for the year, and the Holsteins 3.8 and 3.3. And then I just broke down our 305-day milk over 305 days, and that's kind of this pointer have a, I guess it does. Does it, Bruce, does this pointer have a laser on it?
Yeah, it's the red
button. So the average milk per day, just divided out from this number of 305, the Jerseys, and I don't know that we're actually that high, but again, just using these numbers to compare the two. Milk on the Jersey is about 27 kilos a day, and the Holsteins are 41. And even on an energy-corrected milk, the Jerseys are at 34, and the Holsteins at 42.8, and that's comparing the two at the same fat and protein. So the Holsteins like quite a bit more volume of milk, as you all know. What is interesting though is when you break it down on our energy corrected milk divided by the kilos of dry matter that they're actually consuming, the Jerseys actually have the advantage at 1.67. So they're at 1.67 kilos of milk per kilo of dry matter of feed that they're actually eating. So Jerseys are producing more milk, which all makes sense. A smaller animal, it's going to be more feed efficient. So then when you look at all these, when the Holsteins look like they're way more volume, but you break it down on a per energy correct milk per kilo of dry matter, you'd think that Jerseys, have the advantage. So then you got to ask yourself, why or where are all the large Jersey herds in the province and in the country for that matter? And of course, this picture is from the States, not Canada, and there basically is none or hardly any Jersey herds that are over 150 cows. So why is that? Of course, it's most of you know about SNF, and again, when we started, we kind of focused on, not focused, but thought that dollars per hectoliter and a higher dollars per hectoliter was great, but that actually the higher your dollars per hectoliter gets, the less money you're actually making, and the less. So it's more about the dollars per kilo of quota. So then I broke down the Jerseys versus Holsteins again, and these are kind of old numbers. DFO had a quota calculator, and then they were in the works of updating it, but I don't think it's actually available right now. So based on our two breeds, the payout on the Jerseys is would have been, this is before February's price increase, it's all way higher now, but would have been $19.05, and the Holsteins payout was $19.65. So if I was milking all Holsteins instead of Jerseys, there's 60 cents per kilo, call it 100 kilos, $60 a day times 365 days a year. That's over 20 grand that we're potentially, I guess, losing, that potential money that you're losing because you're milking Jerseys. So on a payout basis, the Holsteins definitely had the advantage. And then if we take it down to a feed cost per kilo of quota, the Jerseys were at $6.13 a day, Holsteins were just over $8 a day. And then divide out by our, I guess, kilos per quota that they're filling per day, the Jerseys are filling a kilo of quota cheaper than the Holstein is. That number can be argued a bit, but the Jerseys had the feed advantage. So it's kind of like on this, Jerseys had a slight advantage for the year, but you could argue that it's basically a wash. One thing I do want to point out, though, of course, is that's Jersey's running at like a 1.9 SNF, and as I said, the lower your SNF is, then the more that those numbers will change in favor of Holsteins. So where's the potential? I'm sure lots of you have seen this or did this calculation, and again, these are old numbers, but we're right now probably about in between here, so 25,000 a year or something lost income on our milk sales. And again, we had the feed advantage, so we're kind of at a wash right now, but I guess where we would like to go is that if we can get our Jerseys up to here, then we're for sure making more money than the Holsteins. And I guess the problem I see, or like at least where we were at, was when these numbers, to say that the Jerseys have the advantage, you have to be high liters and low fat to have the advantage. And if we took, our numbers from 6 years ago, or a Jersey herd that's, down here at 1.7 or 1.8, or like where we were at times in the winter below 1.7, then there's just way too much money left on the table. So in my opinion, the high-fat Jersey herds, that's great. You have high dollars per hectoliter, but you're just leaving a pile of money behind. And this whole SNF thing with DFO, like, the Jersey, if I didn't look up the average in Ontario, but for Jerseys, but I would suspect the average Jersey herd is down around 1.7, 1.8, and the DFO's requirements, or milk requirements for the province, they're up around that 2.0, just over 2.0. So in my opinion, DFO is never ever going to change the pay structure to favor Jersey milk. It might shift to favor higher fat Holstein milk, but the only way to maximize your dollars with all Jerseys is to again get the liters up and the fat down. So yeah, just a bit of a summary again is like, it appears that the Jerseys have the advantage. This is all our numbers within our herd. They're more efficient users of feed. They have the lower input cost, but the dollars per kilo on your milk check, which is right beside the dollars per hectoliter, that's definitely the limiting factor. And as your dollars per hectoliter go up, your Jerseys become less profitable, even though, again, when I started out, I kind of thought it was the opposite. However, you have to be okay with, even if you're a super high producing Jersey herd, you're going to always have to milk more cows than the Holstein herd to fill your quota. And I mean, even if you can get 1.5 kilos on a Jersey herd, then you could argue that if you had the Holsteins, you'd probably be at 1.7. So you're always going to milk more with more cows with Jerseys. Where are we going to head with that info on our farm? The Holstein thing was kind of a temporary fix to get rid of a group of low producers and replace them with some Holsteins that can milk. Just in my own mind, kind of shift away from the again, looking back, you like 4-H and all that, and I didn't do a lot of 4-H, but and the show world and stuff, and you kind of like are, I'm not going to say brainwashed, but like the ideal cow in the type world is a lot different than the ideal cow in a production world. So I put this picture of this cow, and we have lots of cows that'll score way higher than her, and she'll never be an excellent cow. Her udder is too deep. But I think last year she wasn't our highest, but she's been 11.5, 12,000 kilos, and milk's hard to the end and all that. So we're just over the last few years kind of learned to appreciate cows that work hard, even though they don't look as good or never going to make the show ring. The goals, again, to continue to try to increase liters, not the fat. And we do have we've kind of always been limited with our workload for small kids, the wife that works, doing it ourselves. So we actually have a foreign worker that starts May 1st. We kind of kicked around the idea of a year ago about robots, or we did actually even try 3X, and our SNF jumped up to 2.0, but we just couldn't keep up with the work. So we, instead of the robot thing for now, we were trying this foreign worker starts here in a month, which was a long process with paperwork. But at that time, I guess we'll see how good he is and reconsider 3X. I guess in an ideal world, we would double our herd size and hire 2, and then just be 3X all the time and focus on production. But of course, getting quota is always the issue. We're going to start genotesting. I was watching a presentation with Kevin and Jones and Ian Vandenberg that was recently posted there not long ago. And yeah, our breeding program, it's like we've kind of always, the last while, just basically look at the JPI list in the States and then pick bulls from that, because we felt like those were more sires that were kind of more geared to what our goals were. But yeah, after listening to Kevin's presentation, we definitely need, and maybe it's a time thing, but need to focus on what animals are we actually breeding from, and do a better job instead of just breeding everything to production bulls and hoping for the best. So yeah, we do need to, I guess, moving forward, if you're going to increase milk yields, we do need, we've kind of grown, and we do need better dry cow housing. So I feel like a addition on the barn focused on transition cows would definitely help our SNF out. Yeah, I think if we were to like advertise as a breed, like, you know, kilos of energy corrected milk per kilo of dry matter is maybe, I feel like, a better way to promote the breed than to promote the dollars per hectoliter thing, just for the reasons I said earlier. And yeah, the JPI, maybe net merit, we're going to look into the breeding, but we definitely, on our farm, don't care for to use the bulls that are on the top of the LPI list. So yeah, I guess to sum up the presentation, and this is not my quote, I kind of remember back to university. It wasn't my favorite prof, but he kind of always said this quote, and I think it fits our business at home with jerseys, and that's, if you treat it as a business, it'll make a great lifestyle, but if you treat it as a lifestyle, it'll make a poor business. So yeah, with that being said, that's the end of the presentation, and if there's any questions, feel free to ask. And I just threw that last picture in just to prove to anyone in Western Ontario that we can grow good corn in the east. So.
All right, thank you, Charlie. Do we have, you see much difference in health traits?
You know, like we're not genomically testing right now to like prove, but yeah, no, I guess no. I feel like, and I remember like back, like worked for a feed company, and then you'd think pushing cows too hard that you're going to burn them out and all that, and then you realize that the herds that are getting like crazy high production are also the herds that have like things go really well. And then I can think of herds that are like the Holsteins that were like 20 liter average, and you think the cow's not being pushed at all, and then they just have major problems. So yeah, I guess I haven't looked into the genomics enough, and that's kind of the goal once this foreign worker gets here, is to focus more on the breeding program. But I mean, yeah, so it's probably not a good answer to your question. Yep.
Yeah, just maybe a comment there, like, I guess it's fair to say, you're saying it's pretty close, a small advantage to the Holsteins there, but I know BCAs aren't everything, but if you look at your herd average BCAs for your Jerseys and your Holsteins, you are comparing a group of Holsteins that's 20, depending on the back, 20 or 30 BCA points higher.
Yeah, about 20, yeah.
So it's making it even closer, really, when you consider your little summer home cows, I guess.
Yeah, and you, yeah.
So I just comment that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I mean, there's lots of different ways you can argue. You know, like barns. I could also argue our barn size. You know, our back alley's 8 feet, front alley's 12, the stall deck's only 15. So we're kind of sticking a Holstein in a Jersey barn and expecting them to produce as well as they can at Summit Home, right? So I mean, the Holstein producer would argue that, well, they're in a barn that's too small for them, so they're not producing as well as they can. But you know, or you can say like the deductions on DFO, and you'll have less deductions with jerseys. And I guess my point is that for the whole presentation is that jerseys can be really profitable at a high SNF, and to get a high SNF, you need to get high liters and drop your fat. And if you're going to be you know, 1.8 or lower, there's just, for us, way too much money left on the table. Like, you know, 30 grand a year, like, you can buy lots of things, 30 grand every year, right? Like, that can pay for an addition on the barn, that can pay for, so, I mean, and part of it, like, is not necessarily, part of it is just us doing a better job so that cows can peak higher, right? And if you're gonna get higher peaks, you're gonna get lower fat. But the other part of it is, you know, the breeding too, right? And if you're, using, again, I use the LPI thing, but I mean, if you're using bulls that are component bulls, and that's where their production is coming from, then they're just not profitable compared to a cow that can crank a lot of milk with a 4-8 fat test, you know?
Christine?
Sorry, quick question. Your DMI and your energy corrected milk, that's from EBVs, or did you actually measure?
No, that's I wanted to. I was asked, I guess, a couple months ago to do this, and I thought, oh, okay, we'll stick Holsteins in a pen and measure it out and actually do it. But no, I guess we didn't have time for that. We used, basically, that's the number that the ration balancing program says that based on our production, that's what they have to eat to hit that production.
Okay.
So,
Not individual animals measured for,
no, that's right.
okay. And the second one is, have you ever thought about ProDollar instead of LPI?
We have. I guess, you know, I need to investigate the breeding side more, and I'm sure lots of other people can comment on that better. But, you know, I just look at the list of, like, they come out, you know, and like every proof round, and you look at like the LPI list and the ProDollar list, and I don't actually know the formula for ProDollars, but I feel like I look at that list and I still see bulls that I know I wouldn't use. So.
Thank you, Charlie, and good presentation, very well presented. I just got one question. You said you left money on the table, like, so between the ratio of 2 and the ratio of 1.8, there's about, you got to ship 5 liters more to fill a kilo quota. So did you deducted the 5 cents per liter from the 20,000 you said you left on the table? So there's 5 cents per kilo, so quota and transportation and administration. So I'm not sure, is that being calculated or you still got to deduct that?
No, it was kind of like when you're going through this, so no, I didn't. And that's what I was saying, like, you could do the DFO deduction thing too, right? And like, there's so many different angles you can argue. But again, like, the point is like, if you had a Jersey herd at 2.0 and it's all jerseys, you're still making more money regardless, right? So I guess it was kind of good for me. Like, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just, you know, this is kind of good exercise for myself to compare the breeds, and then you, like, actually, you know, convince myself, okay, like, where do we need to go? And for us, like, I guess I have passion for jerseys, not for Holsteins. I don't care to milk Holsteins, but I know that if I'm going to milk jerseys, the only way I'm going to stay in business myself to pay my own bills is to push S&F as high as I can.
Absolutely.
So.
Also, you got a comparison with veterinary bills, like you got more expense with the jerseys compared to Holstein as with health issues or.
No, I don't. It's only been a year and a half in, but I guess my argument to that would be that the whole, I guess you always hear, like, or maybe the breed promote, you know, the lower inputs or the lower vet bills, but I always find that I should read that study that they actually did, because that's usually on a per cow basis and not on a per kilo of quota filled. So if the Holstein's filling more, I think it would be the other way around personally, because you still put a Rumensin bolus in, or you still, you know, like everything, all those things that you spend, and maybe jerseys are, lower maintenance cow, but you also need to milk more of them to fill your quota. So is it really?
Not if you got the fat high, like if you get the rates high. If you get to the rates,
Well, I think.
about the same, I assume.
Well, I think regardless, I mean, like, if you go back to our, I don't think it matters, because, like, here, quota filled per cow 1.39, and the Holsteins were running 1.57. So they're eating the same TMR in the same barn. Everything's the same for them.
Yeah, but if you get a ratio of the 2, then it would be almost the same, isn't it? If you get the both ratio.
No, because these cows are going to adjust as well, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the components are what they are, eating that ration, and you're always going to get better quota fill with Holstein. That's just the way it is. And if you're super keen and you can get a 30-liter average with 5%, well, your Holsteins are probably would have been doing 47. You know, like they'll bump up too, just because you're a good manager or whatever, right? So anyway,
Thanks.
good.
Anybody else?
I do have one more question. Charlie, before you jump to getting a few Holsteins to help improve your SNF, what strategies have you tried to convince your jerseys to be higher in SNF?
Yeah, like it's hard to, the easiest, or easier said than done, but I guess the easiest is if you can increase your liters, then the fat naturally drops and the protein will stay. So we did try 3X for a bit in the one summer, and yeah, SNF jumped up to 2.0, over 2.0, but we didn't have the labor to keep it up at our herd size. We've tried fish meal and amino acids and stuff to try to, really didn't, maybe weren't on long enough to like see a difference, but yeah, it's hard. Like you always feel like you're fighting, you know, trying to get a jersey to do what a Holstein can, kind of thing, right? And I think for us, the next step is the genetics, and basically do what you're doing on your farm, and like, yeah, really focus on breeding the cow that we need, you know, because there is a big difference. Like, you know, like I said, when we bought those cows from Lions, there's a big difference between a jersey that's like bred to milk and a jersey that's bred to look good, you know, and again, not taking anything away from the herd we bought, you know, because he was using some genomic stuff long before I would have thought that was a good idea. So he was ahead of it, I'm sure. But yeah, take a bull like Joel, for example. Like we did have a few of those that we, you know, and he gets promoted lots, and that's just like a bull that's doing the complete opposite of what we need on our farm. But yeah, to answer your question, I guess we tried different protein sources, tried milking 3X. Yeah, I don't. It's easier said than done. Other than being a, you know, trying to be a top manager and getting cows to milk as hard as you can, kind of thing. We do run the ration, like, you know, we'll feed less straw in the mix than what's on paper. Like I'm not gonna say acidosis, but you'll try to push it as much as you can. Yep.
Charlie, at what point would having limited, so we're assuming in all of this that you have unlimited access to forages, is kind of the, you know, you can access. If you were limited in acreage or forages, does that tip the scales one way or the other?
Yes, you'd probably buy fresh Holsteins for $1,500 and not raise any heifers and be making more money. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is neat to see like that the jerseys can fill more quota with the less dry matter intake, and you can do it on less land, and that's all great. At least our farm, we need to be maximizing out our milk check. And the new pay structure, it doesn't favor jerseys, but it helps. It swings that way a little bit, so there's not as much spread. But I mean, 2 years ago, there was just way too much spread and like way too much money left on the table. And yeah, you could do it with less acres, but you were also making 30 grand less on your milk sales that year. So, yep.
More of a comment, less of a question. We've got a mixed herd, 80s built, freestall, small stalls.
Yeah.
Jerseys fit better.
Yeah.
As you said, you got Holsteins in a Jersey barn. We find we get less lactations out of the big Holsteins, so we're raising more heifers, replacing them more often, whereas the Jerseys we're getting way more lactations, like you've only had the Holsteins how long?
Yeah, a year and a half, and
Yeah.
we did purposely select short stature
Yeah.
Holsteins, and
So when you
it's,
start breeding them, bulls, you're getting bigger and bigger Holsteins. We're finding the big ones just break down so quick in the smaller barns.
right,
And that's most of our push is actually go more Jersey,
yep.
is so they actually fit. So would you recommend more of a crossbreed herd to get that variation with the smaller stature then, or?
Yeah, I guess that's personal preference. I mean, like, we're the kind of the same thing. Our barn's 25 years old. The jerseys fit well.
Yeah,
Um,
the Jerseys fit
just
way better.
thinking of it, what Kevin asked earlier, we did switch it to sand a couple years ago, and you'll see a
Yeah,
production increase there to help with S&F. But yeah, but like 2 years ago, again, like before this pricing change, if we're at 100 kilos, leaving 30 grand on the table. So if someone milking 600 cows, you know, that's almost $200,000 a year. That can probably pay for a new barn, right?
They're milking 600 cows though.
No, but that's the point. Is the 600 cow herds are all Holstein,
Yeah.
for a reason, because
They
that
actually
pays.
like cows either though.
Well, they like making money,
Yeah,
and they're making money to pay for the new barn, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I love jerseys. I don't like Holsteins. It was kind of an experiment. Actually, most of them are getting embryos. We did have calves off those ones, and right now our part-time milker, he plays in the show stuff, doesn't actually milk cows, so we're actually putting his embryos in the Holsteins. So that kind of ends it there, but
Holsteins are getting embryos or beef.
yeah.